But I've just figured I think we're good to go here. Let me start the recording on my end for posterity, and I will give you a little signal when we're good to go there, Alex.
Sounds good. I just decided to turn off my phone.
I know. It's like, let me just check.
Wonderful suggestion, Alex. Thank you. Can't recommend that enough, Allison. Definitely let's silence those phones. I forgot.
I know,
Oh,
you'll have
hold on
things.
a second. I'm in the middle.
Especially since I'm yelling at my niece now for not going to school today.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
I know.
it's that time of year. You just kind
Yeah.
of want to lay in bed.
I feel like, kids can get burnt out too, but you don't have bills or responsibilities, so get your ass to school. Kind of my sentiment, but whatever.
And you're like, I'm a little busy to role model today. Can you just take care of yourself for a minute?
Literally.
Alrighty there, you two. I am happy with the way everything looks and the way everything sounds, and I think we're just about on time to get started. So I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to switch the camera to Alex, and if you want to take it away looking into your camera over there, Alex, let's get started with the show.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Onside podcast. This season, we're taking a deeper dive into women's entrepreneurship here in Canada, highlighting amazing entrepreneurial women and leaders who are really making a difference in our innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem. These Fireside Chats are being brought to you as part of our Start Now Incubator project, which supports diverse and intersectional women across Canada to learn and build skills around entrepreneurship and really the ability to scale and grow their companies. I'm your host, Alex McCann, and I'm really so excited about our guest today. Allison Gibson is the Chief Program Officer at Spring. She's a champion for impact with extensive experience in entrepreneurship. She leverages fundraising experience to create innovative programs at Spring as the Chief Program Officer, and she's passionate about sharing her VC knowledge to demystify the world of venture capital and create pathways to funding for diverse founders. Allison's favorite part of her job is mentoring startups and supporting investors to integrate a gender lens into their considerations, into their investment thesis, and their process to increase the amount of capital that is deployed to underrepresented founders. She also utilizes 20 years of experience in managing teams and leading projects to develop training, incubators, accelerator programs for diverse audiences, ensuring optimization and of the participants' learning experience. Allison, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was a mouthful, but thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you here too as well. And I don't even think I covered half of the things that are about you or we're going to get into about you. Those are just like the high level highlights of things that we know about you. But yeah, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you at the Onside podcast.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I love Halifax. Love you, of course. So yeah, very happy to be here. Thanks.
Well, awesome. I shared folks a little bit about you, but I'd love for you to tell a little bit more about your background because you do have quite a varied background with very different kinds of experiences that have woven together to lead you to this moment where you're now this really integral person at Spring as the Chief Program Officer. But maybe if you can tell us a little bit about where you're from and some of the things that have impacted your life over the last couple of years.
For sure. Would love to. So thanks again for having me. I did share earlier before we started that my family's originally from Halifax. So I do have roots here, but I was born and raised in Toronto where I've had more jobs than I could count. Like I actually couldn't count if you asked me to. But that's because I say yes to everything. And I always love a new challenge. So I did start out working in food and hospitality, which led me to, oh my gosh, down various paths that we'll get into. But I always loved the people aspect and the business management. Like I'm a nerd about making experiences perfect and having, the experience that people feel when they're like at a restaurant or whatever it is, like just really, really enjoyed. So I've worked at Disney World. I've worked on cruise ships. I've worked at hotels. Oh my gosh. That's another podcast.
Yeah, I think I'm remembering an episode that I'm like, oh yes, I forgot about Disney.
That's another episode. Yeah. I do not have an NDA, so I can tell you everything about Disney, but yeah, that's another episode. But yeah, I loved kind of just dipping my toe into a little bit of everything to find where I landed. And then I found my sweet spot was definitely operations, which ultimately led me to a really great opportunity to join a team just helping to run an event hub in Toronto that was like catering events, was also a restaurant, was a coffee shop. And within about a year, I transitioned into ownership. And that's when I really started getting into, I would say, or getting onto the path that led me to where I am now. Because in that process, I was like, what is venture capital? Or like, we need money for things. And I'm like, we can't go to the bank for everything. And I'm like, how do you find investors? And it was an interesting process because I was successful, but I made a lot of mistakes that I would love to get into and share. So people don't do what I did.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think there's so many different lessons that people take from I could say cross-pollinating different areas of their lives. The food business, it's really interesting. I don't know if you've watched this show. It's called The Bear. Have you seen that?
Of course,
Okay.
yes, love.
I'm like obsessed with
quite accurate depiction of
Is
the
it?
kitchen.
Is
like,
it?
It actually, as someone who's worked in a lot of kitchens,
Yeah.
I was like, they captured this really well. It's all the small details, like drinking out of those like stupid big storage cups that you're not supposed to drink out of, that usually you put food in. I'm like, they got it. They got it.
And also just in that show, and I'm sure this was their experience as well, it's like getting the funding, getting the resources to run a restaurant or catering business or anything like that, because there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of price fluctuation, a lot of risk. Hopefully every day you're hoping that people show up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to give them something to come back to. But then we see it when we go in the grocery store. Pricing is astronomically high. So from a food cost perspective of running a food business, it's always that delicate dance of wanting to put out a really good quality product, but then looking at the numbers and being like, no one's going to pay $50 for this hamburger. So you have to be very creative with your ingredients while still trying to maintain integrity, which I found easy to do because I don't like nasty, gross, ugly things. So I'm like, I'm not going to serve anything I wouldn't eat. But yeah, definitely a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. And how did you, once you said you moved into ownership position, so you became an investor in the business, and you said you were trying to figure out how to get more money into the company and the business. Can you tell us just a little bit about that? Like, what was that process like?
Definitely didn't see myself transitioning into ownership, but essentially what happened was when I joined the business, I just joined as like a sales and event manager, like just doing my thing. And then gradually, I wouldn't even say slowly, very quickly started taking on a lot of responsibility, and became very integral to running that business within a year of joining. And the business had also just opened. So there was a lot, there was too much going on. It was basically the bear. And then the owner approached me and just said, like, love working with you. This is going really well. How do you feel about ownership and kind of joining me on this crazy ride? And I was like, would love to. Don't know why. And then proceeded to spend like 9 years of the business consuming my life. But COVID popped up. And of course, none of us could predict that what was going to happen happened. But we were watching the numbers and trends, and we were kind of a bit of ahead of the ball, like before everything shut down. We knew it was coming. And so in crunching numbers and making strategic decisions, my business partner and I were like, okay, we've got to do something. And so we decided to pivot, and we had all this space, like 20,000 square feet, this big warehouse. We know food, we have tons of space, but like, what are we going to do? And at that time in Toronto, where the business is located, it was about a month out to get grocery delivery because people weren't wanting to go to grocery stores, and people who are like immunocompromised or elderly were just literally like, I can't get food. So we're like, let's start a grocery delivery business, but one that's rooted in supporting community, food access, affordable prices. Great. How do we do this? So honestly, in about 6 weeks, we needed to find investors, which we did. And then I had to learn, myself and my business partner had to learn the ins and outs of the grocery business. And yes, we know food, but grocery is very different. But we did it. We figured it out, and we were able to essentially, I guess, pivot and launch a same-day grocery delivery by partnering with a very well-known car share ride company. I won't say their name because, it wasn't the best experience working with them, but we did it.
You were trying.
We tried it, and it was really great. And we did that. I ended up leaving the business though at the end of 2020 to go to Spring. Not for any crazy reason other than I was tired. I was like, this was a lot. It was really hard showing up for my community on one hand when people were like, I'm hungry, or there was protests, there was so much happening, and I was just pulled in very many directions, and I didn't feel was able to show up for the business in the way that I had to. So I was like, I'm going to leave. And then Spring, it was like serendipity, like popped up, and they were like, we will take you. And then I ended up there.
Interesting. Well, it's interesting you were talking about, one of the things I think about at Onside is around innovation
Mhm.
and transformation. And I during COVID, same like everybody else, we were like iterating, trying new things and
It's like,
pivoting.
try this
Like,
and then this.
it was like, let's try this partner. Okay, that's not working. Let's try another one. And but in a rapid kind of
Mhm.
prototyping sort of a way. So it sounds like that was something you were able to do
Mhm.
with that business, and it gave you an opportunity as well to kind of learn more about investing and the role
Yeah.
of that. But one thing you said a little bit was you talked about community.
Mhm.
And I know that community and social entrepreneurship is important to you.
Mhm.
Before we jump into spring, because I'm definitely going to do that, can you share a little bit with me about how you think about a community and
Mhm.
social enterprise? Like, why is
Yeah.
that important to you?
It's so funny. I think prior to joining the business, I didn't know what a social enterprise was, and if I had known, might have rethought many, many choices. But essentially, we did operate a for-profit social enterprise, and we prioritized a community that's seen as being very kind of isolated, underserviced, underrepresented all the way. And the community was going through mass revitalization, gentrification.
Mhm.
And we were the first business that popped up that wasn't linked to like a social service. So it ended up being a hub. Like you could come and have coffee, you could come hang out with your friends. And there was a lot of trial and error because at one point, there was pricing that a business needs to have to succeed. And then there's a community that's like, we can't afford that.
Mm.
So it was a lot of trial and error, hiring from the community, listening to the community, really just wayfinding, but using the community as our guide or almost as our compass to see what we're doing, what's right, what's wrong, what can we do better. And it took a lot of trial and error. We made a lot of mistakes, but eventually figured it out. But in running the social enterprise and prioritizing hiring people who typically are overlooked or have challenges obtaining employment for many reasons. It could be like incarceration, so they have a criminal record, lack of experience, financial literacy, and anything. And we were kind of like, come one, come all, we'll take you. And we worked with a lot of social service organizations to get people kind of ready for employment, but then essentially they would come work with us and we would just shove them right into the fire. I remember getting a batch of students who had gone to George Brown. I also went to George Brown, so love that school. We got a batch of students that had just come out of a training program at George Brown, and it was like their first day on the job. And I was like, how would you like to come to the island with me and do a wedding? It's going to be great. It was like that type of environment. And they were all lovely. They're like, let's do it. So it was very much a lot of helping people. I wouldn't even say get back on their feet, just find their way, find purpose through hospitality. And I'm so passionate about that because I'm a firm believer of if you are kind of like, I don't know what to do in life, or I'm not good at anything, go to hospitality. There's something for you, whether it's front of house, whether you're making coffee, you're making drinks, you're serving food, you're making the food, you're cleaning, it doesn't matter. I feel like anyone can kind of find their way. And so we used hospitality and its approachability in just many avenues to help people kind of figure it out. And some people stayed, some left, and some of those people still work in hospitality. Some are lawyers now, accountants, and it was really just transformative. But honestly, just giving people a chance and working with them, meeting them where they're at. So not like expecting anything crazy of them, just like show up as you are, and we'll figure it out. And it was a lot, but it was great.
Well, it's really interesting. You're talking about the approachability of hospitality, and it's something we see a lot now. I don't know if you've kind of generally noticed this kind of, through your programs or things like this, but I feel like people are really craving connection now.
Yes.
There's like a connection deficit, and people are just remembering how to like reconnect.
It's like, remember outside?
Yeah. It's like, oh, you can talk to, the server, the waiter or the waitress, and, you can have a conversation, and it's not just a window, and
Exactly.
there's like an experience that's there. And so I find the need for connection and people finding space and places to do that is actually, I think, are going to be a really great training ground for people. Whether as you said, either staying in hospitality or, moving on to another field kind of, altogether.
Exactly.
So that's really interesting. Now you got this kind of, it sounded like you had a bit of a bug for social enterprise, but of course there's like ups and downs with social enterprise.
Many.
Lot of passion. It's a different way of operating, new ways of thinking about how you create value.
Exactly.
Did that experience kind of from your experience in the kind of food sector, and then you're talking a little bit about hospitality, did those experiences, is that what kind of opened you up to being interested in working at Spring? And maybe we should tell people what Spring is.
Sure.
Because they might not be as familiar.
Yeah. Spring is a company headquartered in Vancouver, but we have a team across Canada, and essentially we support founders to become investment ready. We prioritize founders and businesses that are impact focused. So businesses that do great for people, planet, place, something good. And we also support investors along their journey. So we help people kind of learn about like, how do I become an investor? Like, what is startup investing? And then as people get a little bit more comfortable or even are more experienced, we do have programs for people to actually deploy capital and make real investments and just learn about, how do you strengthen the impact in your thesis, or how do you prioritize gender lens investing and, identify opportunities in women-led businesses and things like that. And it's funny because I was still at my old business and I got a call from someone at Spring, and it was one of those crazy days. If anyone works in food or hospitality, like as the business owner, that means nothing. I wasn't like sitting on my throne drinking lattes. I was actually like behind the bar, like getting drinks ready to go for a catering order while like something had crashed on the computer and like someone was crying. I don't know. All these things were happening. And then I had a call with someone at Spring, and she was running a food program to support Black food founders across Canada. And she asked if I could join as a guest speaker for a session. I was like, sure, like tell me about the program. So we start talking about it and start talking about our experience. And about like 10 minutes into the call, she's like, do you want to run the program? I was like, ma'am, I have a job. I have a very, I'm like, what?
I don't have time for that.
She's like, you have to meet our CEO. Like, just give it, like, just to have a chat with him. I'm like, okay, whatever. And this is Labor Day weekend. So it's like end of summer. I had a very busy summer, and I'll never forget that I wasn't thinking that this was a job interview. So I was sitting on my balcony in a hoodie, like sipping wine, just like getting ready to go into my long weekend. And then I remember I have this call, totally forgot I have this Zoom call. I'm like, who's Keith? I'm like, whatever. Get on the call. And he's like all professional. And I'm literally sitting in my hoodie drinking wine. And I'm like, oh, this is a job interview. Great. This is a great start. But we had a really open and candid conversation just about like what my experience is, what I could bring to the table, and what they're hoping to do with the program. And by the end of the call, he was like, great. Well, if you want to start, we'd love to have you. And I was like, okay. And then like I had a couple weeks to kind of like onboard and integrate with the team. And then we ran the program. And it was the first, it was a food incubator program. But it was like the first national food incubator program in Canada specifically for Black food entrepreneurs. And it was amazing. And that kind of really was where I got to flex my muscle and show that, yes, I have a lot of food experience, but it really brought up a lot of the things that I kind of forgot I had been doing in the past, like helping startups launch. We had an incubation program at my business. I didn't even mention that at any point in the journey, like in the interview. I was like, wait, I help people start food businesses. I help people get investment ready. I just wasn't connecting the dots, I guess, in a way, because I was just thinking very like food and hospitality, but wasn't thinking, oh, this is startup advisory. We are actually getting into investment readiness. And so it actually just ended up being a really good match with Spring.
That's interesting. Well, I don't know if I'm going to show up at my next interview or something like that with a hoodie and wine, but if I ever do, I will channel you. I will be like, okay, just
it's the confidence, I think I was just I was like, well, I'm already here and I look like this with a hoodie on and this, so might as well just go for it. And it worked.
I love it. I love it. The other thing I found interesting is that what you were saying is that you were doing a lot of the things. You were helping companies, you were doing advisory, you were figuring out how to get money and investment and things like this. But it sounded like it was just something you were doing because you just had to do it. You were in the business. You were trying to help people with food problems in their business and things like that. And you didn't really connect the dots into this other world until you got there and you were like, oh, wait a minute, there's a whole nother language.
Yeah. Story of my life. Had no idea that people just kind of sat around and told people what to do in like an advisory capacity when it came to food. And I was like, wait, I don't have to be in the kitchen. I was like, oh, I'm ready for this. But it's true. I was helping people with like acquisition of companies. So, maybe they have like an ice cream company or something, and then they have like Nestle looking at acquiring them. And I was like, okay, let's get you ready. Or I did a lot of work with Campbell's on like large like food production. And then a lot of my clients were these giant tech companies like Shopify and Google, who were really great to patronize a social enterprise because it aligned with their social mandates or their social responsibility. But in doing that, I'm, now connecting people that I meet to these companies and getting them ready, coaching them for, you want to pitch to Google or you have an idea that you want literally Google to invest in. I can help you. But I wasn't thinking of it like as a consultant or a business advisor or even as like an incubator or accelerator program. When I go back and look at my notes, it's exactly what we were doing. We had the same curriculum, kind of the same methodology, sorry, not mythology.
It's a mythical experience.
It is a mythical experience. The same methodology as say like an incubator style program would have, but we were approaching it way more almost grassroots and just more relatable, which I think is why we were so successful, because everyone I helped succeeded and I didn't realize that was not the norm. I was just like, oh, you want Campbell's to buy you out? Okay, we'll do that. And I just like didn't ever think like, oh, well, you got to do like, you have to worry about that. No, like, let's just do it. So I wouldn't say it was very bullish. I was just very optimistic in that, oh, you have a great product. This can happen. And so when I got to the startup world, I was like, oh, wait, we don't, that's not how you approach things. I'm like, oh, no, we got to do this. We got to approach this with the mindset of like, you're going to achieve your goals all the time.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love that kind of transition into this new space and then bringing along these experiences. And that's what I was saying about this cross-pollination of experiences. I always find these things really interesting. We on a previous podcast, we had Amy Gordnier, who's the CEO for SkinFix, a skincare brand. And she was talking about her undergraduate or graduate studies in religious studies. So completely different.
So different.
But she said it was really helpful for her to be able to understand the way people think,
exactly,
their motivations. And it really helped with kind of customer-centric, awareness. So
I say the same thing about hospitality, right? If you can make it in a restaurant or like any food customer service setting, you can take on the world, because we've all been there. We've been a coffee shop or a restaurant and you see a customer flipping out or just not being the nicest, and the staff has to just maintain composure and figure it out and navigate all of these things. Meanwhile, they have 5 or 6, 7 other tables who also need things. And I always say, if you're able to navigate that and still come out, like walk out with a smile on your face and not hating people, then first of all, you're amazing, but that there's something in that. And I will always hire people who I see have hospitality experience on their resume, even if it's not for a hospitality job. So it's that old saying, like, if you worked at McDonald's, you can work anywhere. I don't know that that's true, but the systems and processes and training that you get at like a McDonald's type company are like invaluable. So anyone who can even just make it or thrive in those situations, I will pluck them out of a crowd any day.
It's interesting that my son, he had when he was 15, he had his very first job at a Tim Hortons drive-through.
Oh, bless him.
It was a learning experience. One, I had to learn to get up really early to drop him off because he couldn't drive. And then 2, just the customer interface with
you better make sure that double is exactly the way they like it, or they're going to raise hell.
So learned how to be very polite under very difficult circumstances and work really fast. Just
and honestly, that's I'll take that any day, because you can always train and coach other qualities in people, but like the friendliness, the ability to like think quickly on your feet, to maintain composure, you can't. Either you have it or you don't, in my opinion. So people like your son, if he was able to, have a smile on his face at the end of the day of a work day at Tim Hortons, it's like, oh, let me hire him.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So tell me a little bit more about this amazing role that you have at Spring as the Chief Program Officer. And what is inspiring you now about this role and what you're bringing to it? I'm so curious about, because I know, and we're going to talk a little bit about, or maybe you'll talk about it now, some of the different areas that you're covering and the areas of focus. But tell me a little bit about what you're doing now and what inspires you in your work.
Ooh, I love this question. It's a fun, Spring's awesome to work with, but I love the role because I get to touch kind of all parts of the business. But essentially my role and responsibilities involve managing our project delivery team who are delivering our program. So whether it's for founders or investors, and then being involved at every step of the way. So that's the curriculum development, connecting with the client, whoever that might be, to make sure we're creating something that really reflects what they want to see in terms of training and development. But I think what I really love is that I get to lean into what's important to me. So our team is very much like, what are your priorities, right? As an organization, we do prioritize underrepresented founders, but it's very important to me specifically to support Black women and to make sure that they have the tools and the resources and all the things that can help them be successful. And I'm able to bring that into the work that I do daily with no questions and no pushback. In fact, the team's very supportive of that. And so we ended up launching just this year some programs that are specifically for Black women, which I love because it's really fun. We get to obviously help, but then we get to do our thing and like crack jokes and chat in a way that just really resonates with where we all come from and where we're hoping to go. And I think that's unique in that we're not trying to fit people into a box or ask people to be something that they're not. I'm very much come as you are. So when we're on calls, if it's online, people show up, they may have their kids,
Their glass of wine.
literally their glass of wine. Someone had a face mask on one day and their hair wrapped. And I was like, yeah, show up when you can, because as women, we're very busy. Some of us are mothers, caregivers. We work, all of the above, maybe for some. So I just love that I work somewhere that lets me kind of craft experiences and programs that let people come as they are, but I don't care what you look like. It's, are you here to learn or to advance your business? Yes, then we're on the same page. Also, it's really great that as a whole, we prioritize impact. So regardless of who the end beneficiary is, we also support other people, not just Black women, but it doesn't matter who we're focusing on or targeting with our programs. We all speak the same language of impact and have that as our motivation. So it actually makes the job enjoyable. And I say actually because I've had just jobs, right? You wake up, you show up, you do what you have to do because it's a means to an end. But I wake up with like really cool ideas, are inspired to create like this innovative new thing, or like, or what if we try this, or, and I love that I have a collaborative team and that collaboration is encouraged. It means I have way too many meetings in a day. You never want to see my calendar, but almost every meeting is, okay, what if we try this, or how about this, or this worked really well, so how can we improve? Which I love that it's always like driving that culture of excellence and not just settling for like, this was great, let's just do it again. Much to the chagrin, I would say, of the team. I'm always like, that was amazing, let's blow it up and do it all over again, but let's try new things. And I think that's how you innovate and end up with really cool outcomes.
Yeah. Do you want to share a little bit? I know in some of our work that we do at Onside, we have worked with different groups in the past. Future Capital,
Love Future Capital.
Future Capital, and Marlon. He was a guest on our podcast a long time ago.
Also love Marlon.
Yeah, love Marlon. We've done some work at Onside, kind of looking at building investment capacity, learning the early stage skills of how to invest in a startup.
Right.
If you don't have tons of money, what are some other skills that you might be able to trade for some equity? Looking at some different things. But we know definitely for Black women and underrepresented founders and investors, the landscape is not great. We have to do a lot of work, and we follow a lot of the work that's done by the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. Do you want to talk or share anything about what the status is of the investment landscape as with regards to the kind of level of investment that Black founders or women get? Because I think it's not that great, and I don't think many people understand that.
No, and we hear this like regurgitated stat of like less than 2% of all venture capital funding goes to women founders. So then if you look at Black women, I don't even know the number. It's abysmal. It's obviously less than 1%. It's like a little, not even a drop in the bucket, right? And so when you look at that disparity, it raises questions to me like, well, why is this, right? It's not logical or plausible to assume that Black women aren't able to run businesses. We know that anyone has the potential to be entrepreneurial, but we do see that Black women have the capacity to be super creative, to be like the Jill of all trades, that they show up for their communities. They're able to do like 1,000,001 things at one time while having like almost like the weight of the world on your shoulders, right? And then as a Black woman, I understand sometimes when I navigate certain situations or spaces in this world that they're not created for me, or people look at me and there's judgment and there's bias and there's preconceived, there's all of that. So weighing or factoring all of that in, if you can still come out of all of this with really great ideas, really great entrepreneurial instincts, and just like the guts, honestly, to like jump into being a startup founder, I don't understand why these women aren't getting invested in. And so we can assume it's many things. Like I just mentioned, like it could be bias. It could just be people don't know. But I like kind of shifting the direction of the conversation that I've been having around this and stop looking at like, why aren't women getting funding, and let's just change the narrative and talk about why we should be funding them. I don't want to keep like regurgitating that stat of like, we know we don't get the money. Like, how can we start deploying this capital and getting it to women, specifically Black women when it comes to me? And one of the really cool things that I've realized when I talk to women, it's almost like what I went through, where I didn't realize I was already doing startup advisory. A lot of these women don't realize that they're already badass entrepreneurs. They're already doing the thing. And so they'll book like a coaching call with me and they'll tell me all that they've done on their own. And I was like, you did this by yourself with like little to no money? I'm always like, ma'am, people blow through millions of dollars trying to do what you just essentially bootstrapped on your own. And I don't know why there's that disconnect. I just think investors aren't looking there. They're just not aware that there's these really great opportunities. And often I find women, especially Black women, lean into businesses that are typically not seen as being like venture backable or super exciting because it's lifestyle. And I'm like, have you been to Sephora before? Like, hello, like there is
the beauty industry is worth billions of dollars.
Hello, I don't look like this when I wake up in the morning. It took a lot of elbow grease to look like this. But my point is that there are valuable ideas, and I teach people. You show up as you are. You don't need to switch a damn thing for anyone. You don't need to conform or fit into a box. What you bring to the table is enough. But what I do teach them are kind of like the insider tips and tricks, that information that's typically gatekept that we may not have heard our parents talking about at home. I have friends who grew up hearing their parents talk about all these really cool like investments that they would have made at work, or really like just cool experiences that they would have overheard their parents talking about. I didn't hear that from my like very working class parents. So there's one step of like kind of having to learn everything on your own or to figure it out. But then the other is, do you actually need to learn all that BS? Like a lot of it is just kind of fluff. And I keep telling people, you don't need it. If you can get to a certain point without having that historical knowledge, great. But now that you're here and you understand that there are, I guess, for lack of better words, like there are rules to this, there are certain ways to do things, there are, I guess, boundaries to play within. It's fine. Learn what those boundaries are and then blow them up. Because for me, once I know what people are expecting or what the typical or the norm is, I'm very quick to look at it and go, well, how can we do this better? How can we dissect this and make this more equitable and approachable? So I just teach women to do the same. And if people don't want to listen to you or they don't like your idea, then they're probably not the right investors or people for you to work with. Like there is someone out there, there is your audience. You just have to find it. I think that's the stage we're at now. We know the stats are abysmal and we don't get the money. Okay, so how do we get to the next step, which is, okay, finding people who are open to listening and investing so we can get the money.
I love it. I love it. It's interesting. We've come across some of this research that says that women, and especially women of color, do not, by the time they enter an accelerator or an incubator, they've like already developed a product, they're in the market.
Yeah.
A lot of men will just have an idea on a piece of paper.
A literal napkin, a dusty, crusty napkin they pulled out their pocket. And someone's like, here's $1 billion.
Here's $1 billion. They do a pitch, and next thing they've got money in their pocket and they're just ready to go. Meanwhile, there's the woman you're talking about, bootstrapping, getting everything, products in the market, like doing all the marketing themselves, and breastfeeding a baby and like taking care of
their son to Tim Hortons at 4 a.m. for his shift. But for some reason, she's not seen as being a good leader or not capable of coming up with good ideas. And I'm like, have you met a woman before? Like, that's all we do, to be quite honest.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting, but there is this like disconnect where a lot of women don't feel either the confidence, they're already doing the things, they don't realize that what they're doing is of value to someone. And so the confidence, and then getting the support kind of at the right time. We run a Start Now incubator, and we do have a lot of women. This is the first time they've ever either accessed any programming. Some of it could be short, like a little marketing thing or something like that. Or we have like longer cohort programs to build capacity and training. And it's the first time that they've ever been able to access any of that kind of programming, especially if they do not have a tech focus.
Yes.
And we know a lot of women do not necessarily. There are women who do, which let's keep doing that. But there are a lot of women and a lot of women of color that come in food or beverage or just other sectors. And so they never find anything that supports them.
Right.
And they're kind of being left behind.
Which is silly because we all need food.
We need food.
I need the serums I used this morning. We need things.
My hand cream, I need it.
Hello. And you know what? Tech is great. And I often hear people say, like, if you don't have a tech component to your business, you should find one or you should integrate one. And I'm like, okay, I see where you're coming from, because technology can be useful and be our friend, but don't just slap AI onto what you're doing
Mhm.
for no reason. Like sometimes people will pitch businesses to me, like, I have an AI focused startup. I'm like, you make hot dogs. Like there's not, like, we don't need AI for everything. Or maybe we do, but definitely not to do some of the things that we're using AI for. And so I think that women having the confidence or courage to look at what they're doing and seeing it as valuable, as useful, as something they should be self-promoting and advocating for is where the work needs to be done.
Mhm.
Just naturally, I find most women aren't quick to like brag or like speak up about their accomplishments. Whereas to your
Mhm.
point, a man will have an idea on a napkin and be like, I did this. And like, but you have to look at that and say, well, having the confidence to be so prideful and boastful and sure of this napkin in the
Mhm.
eyes of, say, like an investor or an audience is something to admire. And you're able to convince people that, okay, well, if you've only had this like one little thing done and you're so confident, like there's got to be something here.
Mhm.
Whereas women will literally have created and be running a business and be like, oh, I just do this little thing sometimes. And meanwhile, it's just like full-fledged business. And I'm like, no, no, no. So maybe it's just us getting better at like articulating what we're doing,
Mhm.
speaking up, promoting, being boastful, and not limiting ourselves. I often
Mhm.
hear women saying, oh, well, I aspire to be this whatever, a thing that they're already doing. And I'm like, no, you are already doing it. You may not be where you want to, where you hope to end up on that journey, but don't limit yourself and say, well, one day I'll get there. No, you're already there. It's just
Mhm.
about articulating it properly.
Interesting. We work with a great company that's one of our partners. They're called Jelly Social. They really focus on BIPOC entrepreneurs, and they use a Jelly bot. I love this thing.
Ooh.
It's like a tool they go through. Our participants go through and they learn how to tell their brand story and their
Ooh,
narrative.
love.
And they do use some AI.
This is
to
what
help
AI is
them.
for.
Yeah,
We
to
need
help
AI
them.
helping us,
Yeah,
not
to help them.
painting pictures.
Yeah,
but
and
sure.
but to go through and be able to come and be able to like feel confident about a story and
Right.
tell it and sell
I love
what
that.
they're about. Yeah.
Oh, look them
So
up. That sounds so cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some AI that's okay.
That's
We
okay.
gotta,
Yeah,
you
I'm
gotta have the
I'm
AI.
not hating on it. I just don't need to see another like AI, I don't know, artwork or photo or
Yeah.
I don't know. I want it to do the work I don't want to do. I don't want
Yeah.
AI making music and painting pictures. I want to do that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. I was at a cocktail or networking thing, and everyone was talking about AI, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to add AI to my name. It's just going to be Alex AI.
Love it.
I'm just going to then people will be like, oh, what's that?
What's
Alex
that?
AI. Well, we talked a little bit about what you do at Spring and kind of impact investing. What do you think the role is for impact investing in shaping the kinds of businesses that get funded and the
Mm,
solutions that we can get?
ooh, great question. I think like impact investing at its core prioritizes impact. It prioritizes really good things. We try to stay away from companies that cause harm. And so if we're using that as the lens or just like the vehicle to fuel change, the opportunity here is that you have so many chances to take that risk or essentially take that chance on a company that could be the next big thing to change something in the world that can create systemic change.
Mm.
And I talk to investors all the time and I ask them, especially when I was first starting out about, I would say when I really started to get into like the world of venture capital about 4 years ago, I would ask investors, how, you make all these investments. How many of your investments do you see a return on in a year or what percentage? And often I was hearing, if I'm lucky, 10%. And I go, okay, great. So you're spending all of this money and you know that you're not going to receive a return on most of it. Why wouldn't you then invest with purpose? Meaning if you see there's a startup or you see there's a business, a woman, any person that is trying to get a startup off the ground that does something good, that solves a really challenging like solution or just could end up being the next big thing, but from a really humanitarian or like impact focused standpoint, why wouldn't you invest in that? Right? It doesn't always have to be investing in like the big sexy tech idea, which is fine. There's space for that.
Mhm.
But what about the ideas that have the possibility to change something, to I don't want to be like, change the world, but like
Yeah, change
maybe
the
make
world.
life a little easier for
Yeah.
people. And so that's the thesis that I kind of approach any investment with is like, yes, is this a great idea? Am I going to be able to make money back? Obviously, that's pretty much the basis of it. But then I also look at the impact and like, maybe the value chain, like who are they going to end up hiring to execute this idea or which communities are going to benefit? And I think that's what impact investing has the power to do. In that, if you're deploying capital and it's risky, you have no idea if you're getting money back, stop investing in the same things. Like, and take a chance and invest in something new, especially something that can create positive change or do good for others. Because at the very least, if you don't get your money back, you're testing something. You're maybe proving or disproving a hypothesis or bias or something that relates to how people could essentially just live better lives or function better or have access to more resources or whatever it is. And so I really look at startup investing as a tool for, yes, generating money, but it actually is how we create this positive change that we all say we want to see.
And I know that Spring focuses on health and life sciences, clean tech, and underrepresented women. If people want to learn a little bit more about Spring and the things that you're up to, how can people do that? And before you jump and tell people where they can go to find out, is there anything that's going on that you want to share about, like upcoming activities or things that are happening for Spring, or something you're excited about?
Yes. So I always tell people, just find me, message me. Please don't. We're getting into the holidays. I mean, I love you all, but
in the new year,
in the new
year.
Let's circle back to this in January for real. But I think what I'm most excited about is we're just about to wrap up our Raise and Rise Connection series, which involved myself and my colleague Nema traveling across Canada to actually meet with, in person, not on a screen, and talk to Black women to just find out where they're at, what do they need, what's going on in their entrepreneurial journey, what kind of capital are they trying to access, and then what support do they need to get there. And in our conversations and parties and events and everything, what's Rise is just the need or that craving for community. So the next step, our evolution of this program, is going to be, how do we create that community? So I'm really excited about it. But what I also love is that it kind of teed up people to apply for our Invest Together program. It's probably the program that Spring is known most for. It used to be called our Impact Investor Challenge, but we've changed the name to Invest Together because essentially it is a program where founders come together with investors, and they go through a learning journey to, of course, select one person to win at least $100,000 of real investment. But you go through like due diligence. You go through like, what is it like to pitch to investors and answer their questions and have them go through your data room and have to quantify the impact and everything that you do. So I really love that we kind of did this like market sensing to find out what people want. And then we have an actual program that we have many programs, but we have a program that women can go into. And we have the next cohort starts in February. So depending on people hear this, applications are open, but if you've missed the boat, Spring does run a women-led Invest Together program, usually once a year. And so it's a really great opportunity for any women who run an impact business to come together, learn as a community, and hopefully get some money.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Well, I want to thank you so much, Allison, for joining us here on the Onside podcast. I think I've learned so much about yourself, about your journey, about all the great things that you're doing at Spring, and how far we have to go to get more money into the hands of underrepresented founders and women. So I really appreciate you coming to the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So come, hopefully we'll get to see you again another time. And for everyone else, I would like to encourage you to like and subscribe to the podcast. You can learn more about Onside on our website, onsidenow.ca, and hopefully you'll tune in for our next episode. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again soon.